Good evening, family. My name is Nick. I'm a grateful alcoholic and so grateful to be with you all this evening. Karen, thanks for chairing the meeting and for all the attendees here. 93 or so strong and counting. Warms the cockles of my heart to see some of my brothers here from our 7 o'clock Rojo meeting, which throughout the week has attended anywhere from 100 guys to 150 some days, and really a special close bond. And David, of course, thank you for asking me to speak. To quote the great Dr. Bob, let's not louse this thing up, Nick. Let's keep it simple. And so I'm going to spend some time talking about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I'm going to try my best to talk about the ism, the inside me, and not focus on what it was that took me away from normality, if you will. And so I'm going to start at the beginning, if you don't mind. Although I'll let you know that my sobriety date is June 29th, 2019. So with the grace of God and the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, I celebrated 7 years yesterday. And in doing so, I bet I had, I don't know, not boasting, just talking. When I talk about me tonight, I want you to know I'm talking about all of you. All right, because I'm going to use a lot of I statements because it's a reflection of where my life is now because of all of you. Lots and lots of calls and support yesterday. And so I'll start at the beginning. With this caveat, I have three beautiful kids. And my story starts something like this. And it's a story that I told my kids at their bedside almost every night when they were growing up in their formative years. And it started like this. In a small town in upstate New York called Poughkeepsie, a little boy was born to Dominic and Marie Frazone on March 12, 1958. His given name was Nicholas, but for most of his life he was called Little Nicky, and he was a very, very, very happy boy. And I'd go on and I would tell him about the coal pockets at the end of our street, Winnicke Avenue, and how we climbed the train trestle and jumped into the coal after Mom said, "Don't go to the coal pockets because I can't get the coal out of your clothes." Or we'd go to the stream with slingshots and we'd shoot out the bottles at a bottle manufacturer across the way. Or we'd go bicycle riding with somebody on the handlebars, stop at Dairy Queen for a Mr. Misty so we could get that brain freeze, go to the public pool by ourselves, make sure we were home by the time the street lights went out, made sure that we ate the apple cinnamon crumble in the TV dinner. That was my favorite. And I continued to talk to my kids about all those things because I wanted to let them know that despite it all, as you'll hear, little Nicky was truly a very, very happy boy. But there were consequences. Uh, Anne-Marie and Dominic Frazone, I don't think they got along the day they were married, and I'm pretty sure my dad's girlfriend was the bridesmaid. I grew up on 14 Grub Street in Poughkeepsie, and at 8.5 Grub Street, 8.5, Philomena and Frank Frazone, my grandparents from the old country in Italy, built the property. It was a very um, it was very volatile in my house. I was born when my parents were not together. They had not yet divorced, but they were Splitsville. And I have an older brother who is 10 years older and a brother who's 9 years older. My brother, who is 10 years older, celebrated 43 years of sobriety not long ago. But he was a latchkey kid out of the house at 14, in the Navy at 16, two kids by 17, three or four marriages later, and he's living his best life now. And so I kind of grew up alone as a latchkey kid. I had the run of the house. And you might not be able to tell this, but I was a husky kid. Husky is the word we used. Fat. At least I thought it was then. And that made me different. And I was a kid doing my homework on the bus the day the homework was due. And I was a kid that quit the football team because I wanted to watch Batman and eat Pop-Tarts. a little bit of sloth there. But as I matriculated and I went through school, the things were fairly normal. I slimmed down a little bit and I became fairly proficient in athletics, particularly in baseball. And life was good. I started to drink when I was 14 under the alias of Frank Grabowski. And Frank Grabowski was a guy down the street who let me borrow his license. Drinking age in New York upstate at the time was 16, wasn't a picture ID. For some reason, you had to know the driver's license number, which was about 37 characters. And if you didn't know it, they didn't really care. And so I started to go to drink for experimental reasons. I loved music. I certainly loved girls. I can tell you that. I loved just the environment of it and continued to drink hard. As I look back on it, I didn't know it then, I know it now, but I liked to drink hard and I liked to drink to the end. Not so much for a particular effect or result, but just because I never wanted the lights to go out. Boy, I hated when I would hear last call or you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And I didn't. I'd go find somewhere else. And so that's really my, years of high school, doing high school things, you know, going to make out point and stuff like that. Fairly not really any trouble to speak of, except trouble in the household. And I think in fourth or fifth grade, I tell you this not to boast, I'm an attorney to you, but I think I was an attorney then. I had to sit my parents down and say, listen, you guys are killing me, and somebody's going to kill someone else, and I can't take it anymore. And I said, something's got to give. So my dad moved to 8.5, grew up, and my mom stayed at 14. And never the twain shall meet. And that worked out well for me. I got 5 from mom and 5 from dad, and they didn't talk. And so I was pretty well off with the money department. In 1975, I met my longest life partner to this day, my former bride of 36 years. And we stayed together to 2021 when we were divorced amicably, and I'll get to that part. Lisa was the statistician on my baseball team. And I had lots of scouts come and look for me, and I'd look at the book and I'd say, you know, hon, that wasn't a hit. She said, well, you would have hit it. You would have hit it. And so scouts are coming and looking at this guy, this husky kid, saying, Christ, takes the guy about a minute and a half to get to first base. In any event, that turned out to be one of the most glorious relationships of my life. And there were some ups and downs. But from 1975 up until 1982, we separated. I came out here to go to school, and she stayed in New York City. She was a nurse, and we had broken up. And my dad died a couple weeks before the bar exam, and a knock came at the door while I was out doing my ripping and running. And it was Lisa saying, Dominic died, I'm taking you home. And I said to myself, what the heck am I doing? Here she is, et cetera, et cetera. So the love continued. In the first 20 years of my marriage was nirvana. Let me back up a little bit. I'm a little ahead of my skis here. So I graduated high school fine. I got a scholarship to a D3 school to play baseball, and that was all well and good. And then I transferred to the big times, the University of Maryland, and I got hurt. And that's when my activity really increased. It was college on steroids, and I got introduced to non-conference approved materials that come in a bag and a straw, and I'm going to leave it right there. Going to leave it right there. And that became really, really the thing. And I'm going to tell you an important thing about mine. I don't want to bring other things into this, but I want to tell you an important thing that happened to me with regard to my relationship with the snortable kind of drugs and alcohol, because I drank and I drank and I drank. And so Lisa and I got married in 1986. My career's going fine. And then we had started to have kids. And 3 of the greatest blessings in my life. And Lisa was very strict. Lisa had a rule: if I wanted to go out and be with other people, it meant I didn't want to be with her. So I felt as if I was controlled for most of my marriage. And it became difficult. And then things changed when we had kids, and that Camelot turned into something very, very toxic. And it gave me another reason, accelerated reason, to really start to drink and to sneak. My son Jeremy is 33. At 12 years old, I left the master bedroom and went into another room to sleep for the rest of my days, not realizing. I would tell you then I did it because she liked it hot and the lights on and to watch television, and I liked it cold and dark and had to get up early. I think there was something else calling me, and that really allowed me to have my own environment to really, really get my sickness on. Drinking over all the things that you've heard in the rooms, never my fault, not hurting anyone else. And so my drinking accelerated and it accelerated, and then my use of other things accelerated and accelerated. And I didn't do anything about it. I never tried to stop. And things were very bad in the house. My house was so bad that if I walked in the first floor, Lisa would walk to the second. And if I went to the second, she'd walk to the first. If I walked into Whole Foods, she'd walk out. If she went to the cleaner, she'd pick up her clothes and leave mine. My daughter is a writer. I have three children, as I mentioned, and she wrote a book, and the first sentence starts, I grew up in a house of darkness, a house of silence, excuse me. And boy, if that didn't cut me. And it was true. But for the advent of texting, the Frazone Corporation, if you will not have functioned. And those texts were basically limited to, can you get Jeremy at this place? Can you pick up Paige here? Will you be home for our neighbor's funeral? And things like that. And all the while I blamed her and I blamed her and I blamed her. I will tell you that I came in February of 2019. My best guesstimate, and I've tried to do some deep dive on this, is somewhere around 2002 or 2003, I became an all-day, everyday drinker and drugger. All day, every day. I slept with a bottle in my bed, and I couldn't go from the bed to the bathroom to the kitchen table to the car to the office without having both of those things with me. My life for a better part of 20 years was shower, sweat, and soil. Loads of clothes, extra clothes in the trunk from Target because I would need those. Extra clothes in the office, water bottles filled with vodka. And then in 2014, my middle daughter had a psychotic break with food. And I'm always a little reticent to talk about this because it sounds like the reason. It is not, but it was an accelerant. A psychotic break with food, never wanted to eat again. And here's a girl who was 5'9" and star athlete and flute player and grade A, the whole thing. It was just the stress of life. And she had suicidal ideations. And I was really at that point where I was just praying to take me and not her. And so this life went on, this life of darkness, this life of silence, this life of secrecy. I mean, I had 20 some employees who knew that Nick was a little off because I have a goofy disposition as it is. And part of that is probably self-effacing to keep you at bay. So much so that when I put an addition and remodeled my kitchen, the first thing I had made was a mudroom that had a little bar there. Bar area, a little counter where you kept bottles. So that when I walked in the door, I could pour a drink to mask the fact that I had 6 or 7 downtown. And so when Dad showed up a little goofy, it was, well, Dad, of course he's goofy. He just poured a drink. Uh-huh. And so this went on. And I was as miserable could be. But I had no part to play in it. You treat me like that, the car that I bought you, the house that I've built for you, the 3 kids I put through college, and you're angry at me? It's like a few good men, right? I'd rather you just said thank you. And I really believed that to my core. And part of that was because I stepped over every corner and I didn't put a dollar in the guy's hat. I put five. Give him five. How could I possibly be called selfish when that would come when the program came? And so that's the what it's like. Miserable. How I got there, I'll tell you in a few minutes. The end of February of 2019, 4 months before I would finally put it down, hopefully for the last time, my son Jeremy, who was a world traveler, my oldest child, was home for an extended time in the summer. And he was home longer than he should have been. He was teaching English in Thailand. He was over in China doing some of this and doing that. He's in the hotel business now. That was a precursor to his love of just being anywhere but the United States. Not that he hates the States, he just loves the whole international life. And I'm proud to tell you that he's excelling at that, but I'm also proud to tell you that I think he's the singular reason accepting God here. And I'll get about talk about God, not to make God second, but just in order. I think he's the singular reason that I was able to at least get out of my own way. And it came this way. In my house, in that suburban home in Deerfield, Illinois, there was a den with a pocket door and a fireplace and a couch and two side chairs. One chair was Dad's reading chair, reading, and the other chair was the discipline chair for my kids. And what do I mean by discipline? Beating them? No. Sit them down and talk to them. My baby Carly, who lives with me here downtown Chicago, was never in that chair. Paige, my middle daughter, two or three times some silly stuff. Jeremy, young Jeezy, a dozen or more times. In this particular February, cold, cold, darker than it should have been that night, I'm all strung out in that den with the pocket door closed as the family's living their life, unbeknownst to me in the other rooms. And for the first time, maybe ever, the door opens. They knew Dad was up to something, but they really didn't, I think, want to confront it. Because then what? And so my son comes in and he sits down in the chair next to the couch. And I'm laying there and I say, "Hey, son, what's going on? So let me ask you a question. Weren't you supposed to be in Thailand like 10 days or 2 weeks ago? Christ, I don't even know what my kid's leaving." He says, "Yeah." And here comes the great cover up. The great cover up. Yes, son, I understand. You probably witnessed that mom and I are at wit's ends and it's just not good. And I'm sure you've had a chance to observe that. And I think you're old enough now that I can tell you it's not the booze, it's the marriage. I think you're old enough now that I can tell you that mom and I are probably broken. It might be irreparable. And he didn't say anything. I said, "It's really hard for me to tell you this. Is there anything you'd like to say?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Go ahead." He said, "No, not there. Get in that chair." And for the first time, he put me in the discipline chair. Then he reached over and he's as big as I am, 6'2" and big. And he grabbed me around the neck, not in a loving way. He said it with tear-stained cheeks. And he said, "I want to tell you something. If you die, I effing die with you. You're going away. You got a major, major league problem. There's more of that stuff in the car that I'm driving than there is in Bolivia. And you're going away." And I said, "I can't go away because I said I'll miss 28 days of work." He says, "Shit, you ain't been to work in 5 years." Smart kid. And so, not to disappoint, I went to my office and I looked and I found treatment in Malibu. And I said, "Son, I got good news." "What's that, Dad?" "I've decided to go to treatment and I'm going to Malibu." He said, "The F you are. You're going to Center City, Minnesota, and you're going on Sunday, and I'm taking you." I said, "Minnesota? It's cold as hell." He said, "You and that nose aren't getting anywhere near the state of Florida. I can guarantee you that." And that was the beginning of the beginning. And it was not enough to keep me away from booze and alcohol and drugs. And it amazes me that I hear in the rooms stories of relapse. I call it resumption in my case because I had one foot on the boat and one foot on the dock. Between February, call it March 1st, 19, and June 29th, a week or so before that, got thrown out of 4 sober houses. Asked to leave Hazleton, Betty Ford. I don't know if they threw me out. They politely asked me to leave. And the reason for that, before we get to what happened, was because it was clear to me that the steps were out of order. And I needed to rewrite them because that's what I do as a lawyer. And I did that. How the hell can I admit to God unless I admit to myself first? So that's out of order. And 6 and 7 are saying the same damn thing. That's redundant. And why does he say character defects and shortcomings? Is the guy a moron? I was in an intellectual battle for my life. And it seemed to me my sole purpose with all these hardworking people was to prove to them beyond a reasonable doubt that what they were teaching doesn't work. Call me selfish. I had all the answers. And then my life changed. I'm going to tell you about 4 or 5 touch points. And if I added them up and I've tried to the time that these short conversations or words or statements happen, if I added all of those up, they'd be less than 5 minutes. They'd be less than 5 minutes. The first came when I left treatment for the first time. And I talked about that bag and the straw, and this was important for me. I came back and I said, well, I know I'm that. I know I'm that. But I most certainly can drink. And I drank. And within 20 minutes, I was that again. And I went back up, and here comes the first gentle touch. To the guy who worked so hard with me, his name is Paul A. He celebrates 43 years today. I spoke with him earlier. And he was waiting at the door, and he said, I need you to be back, King Baby. Just do me a favor, get the F out of your own way. And a little bit of the sunroof started to open, little bit. And then I had to, of course, be in the debating society about the existence of God. I had to do that. Listen, I came here not for a religious education. I came here to stop drinking. And I will like to tell you that with all due respect, while I believe in God, I'm still waiting for that bicycle. And it hasn't showed up. And my rear end's on fire, and I need something that I can see, touch, taste, and smell. And so this greater idea, you've just spent the better part of 28 days telling me that I'm selfish, self-centered, egocentric, and now you're telling me I got to believe in this something greater. It's not making any sense to me, Paul. Do better. He said, I'm going to do better. Here's what we're going to do, big shot. In step 2 came to believe in a power greater than yourself. That goes out the door with you. We're going to change the word greater to other. Came to believe in a power other than yourself. I said, say that again. Say that again. And he did. And sunroof starts to open even more. He said, you can't fix your broke brain with your broke brain. It's really just that simple. And that was really the beginning of the combination of things, the disappointment, the fact that I had realized that in the face of my son's tear-stained cheeks, I not that I wouldn't, that I couldn't stop. The fact that I had thoroughly convinced myself, after trying everything on my own to become a reasonable drinker, Thursday through Saturday, church on Sunday, work Monday through Wednesday as hard as I could. I failed every one of those. And I am so grateful that during these times of resumption, I never went out. I was always within the doors of people who were caring for me and giving me another chance and talking about higher levels of care. I flunked 9 to 12. They made me go 9 to 2:30. I flunked 9 to 2:30. They made me go residential. I came back from residential. I flunked 9 to 12. They made me go 9 to... And I finally said to him, please tell me that your mission statement or your formula isn't to send me to Minnesota every time I relapse. And they said, that's exactly what it is. I said, well, that's silly. They said, no, it just has to do with level of care. You're not proving to us that you are able to do any of this within the time, and maybe not even after residential, because you've already been there. And so these kind, decent people that I gave fits to, all because I wanted something other than what the program was selling, 21 minutes. And so I came back and I started to do when I went back up to work with Paul. I was at the height of embarrassment. He had worked one-on-one with me very hard. And I said to the counselor, my counselor at the time, I said, listen, I don't know how we do this. And this was before COVID or Zoom. I said, I don't know how we do this, but what do you think of this? I want to work with Paul again, but I don't want him to see me. She says, well, how the hell are you going to do that? I said, I don't know, but we got to figure it out because I'm too embarrassed. And this lurking man of 6'4" comes out of the bathroom door in her office, having waited for me, having already been debriefed on the fact that I said in this very same manner to that counselor, I am ready to read all the black parts and do whatever you tell me, except I will never, ever, never, ever, ever live in a sober living house. And Paul tiptoes out. Counselor is there, and Paul says, Nick, I fall in love with my clients, and I loved working with you, but I'm not sure I can take you back. You know, what do you what is your plan after Hazleton? He set me up. You ever think about sober living? Because I really, I really think that'd be a good thing for you. And maybe if sober living was on the horizon, maybe I could find a spot for you. And I spent 2.5 years in sober living. It saved my life. Saved my life. As a matter of fact, let you in on a little secret. This, not being boastful again, this deluxe high-rise apartment that I'm living in right now was a sober living house. And in that room over there on day 100, the obsession of the mind was removed. And I'll be hard-pressed to ever leave this apartment, even though there are others that are less expensive and perhaps more desirable. I walk in that room and the glow comes. It's like, and what was that like? I was talking to someone earlier today. Because I had this 24 hours a day obsession with alcohol and drugs, meaning that this entire time that I've been talking to you for plus 20 minutes, the only thing I'd be thinking about when I'm talking is when is this going to be over so I can have a drink? And everything in my life that was that way. When will this movie be over? When will I be able to go to the bathroom? When? And it just couldn't stop. It just couldn't stop. I do remember days hitting myself to try to make it stop, and I couldn't. And on that day 100, I put my left foot on the floor and I woke up and I had a physical manifestation. I went, wait a second, wait a second. There's nothing there. It's kind of like trying to describe fire to fish. There's just nothing there. And so if I were to get to the very end of my talk here and tell you what's the greatest gift I've ever had, other than being at the grace of God, it's the gift to live in peace. The gift of serenity, which people who are normal, I suppose, get to experience on some level, perhaps not on a level that many of us do. And so what did I do? I did what you all did. Many of you did, I suppose. I got a good sponsor and I started to work the steps. I got out of my own way. I accepted the steps in the order that they were written, although I still have my misgivings, but that's another story. And, I will tell you the most transformative words in my life at 61 years old when I came in were the five words, what part did I play? What part did I play? I never, for 61 years before that, really, in that fashion, in that environment, under those circumstances, was ever caused to ask myself, what part did I play? And this guy, Paul, boy, was he my mentor. He says, I want you to be fearless and thorough. And some people start from today and go backwards. For some reason on my list, I went from backwards to today. And you would think Lisa, the woman who picked up my cleaning, didn't pick up my cleaning, and didn't cook my food, and did, but, dee. You'd think she'd be number one on the list? Not even close. Sister Vincent Farah, St. Mary's School, Poughkeepsie High School. Third grade, she called me a fat pimplehead. Now, while truth may be a defense, Paul pointed out to me, I wore a Beatles haircut so the sun never saw my forehead, so I did have a lot of acne. And back to that husky kid. I ate a lot of sweets, and when I put my knees up on my desk, the desk flew over and jawbreakers flew all over the floor. And that was about it with the nun. And he said, well, let's talk about that because it's interesting to me. What kind of student were you? Oh, I said I was a hellion. I wore my hair over my collar. I wore blue shirts and not white ones. I would not wear that blue jacket. It had polyester in it. And those gray pants, they made me look even more huskier. I stole the wine and the hosts. They weren't blessed. I didn't do my homework. He says, all right, I get it. You're an asshole. I said, all right, call me that. He says, well, let's talk about the two good students. You remember them? I said, oh, yeah. Tom Vianney and Carol Mullen. And how were they treated? I said, they walked on water. He says, uh-huh. He said, I don't want to tell you that what Sister Vincent Ferris said or did to you is right. But I want you to start understanding as soon as you can as you go through these resentments. You got to learn to take people where they are. And Sister Vincent Ferrer didn't call you that because of the jawbreaker. She called you that because every darn day she's got to go to work. She's got to deal with this not so little Nikki, who's just causing her whole life nothing but aggravation. She can't teach him. She can't discipline him. She can't keep him away from the other kids. She can't keep sending him to the principal. And that began a journey. 13, 15, 17 pages, resentments up and down. What part did I play? And I really started to see patterns, fear, and get down to the causes and conditions, which at 13 minutes leads me to some important revelations about myself. I had this notion that because of what I had become, an alcoholic and an addict, that these things that we talk about in 6 and 7, these defects of character, these shortcomings, were somehow caused by my alcoholism. That because I drank and drugged, this is what I became. And it was pointed out to me that that's not true at all. And I believe this to my core, and it was really important for me. You see, as long as I could blame the drink or the drug for whatever was going on with me, I was off the hook. I was off the hook. And what I learned from this mentor and others is that I rather refer to them as old habits, the things that we talk about on a regular basis. Old habits. After all, that little Nicky kid that was chasing Tina Tag in the closet in third grade, he was lustful. That kid that was doing his homework the morning of on the bus, he was a procrastinator. That kid that was eating Pop-Tarts and TV dinners and hosted ho-hos and blizzards and yeah, he was gluttonous. That kid couldn't stand someone talking to Vanessa Russo because in fourth grade she was his. Jealous. Jealous. So in my life, I've learned is nothing more than dealing with habituated patterns of brokenness. I break and I repair. I break and I repair. There's a difference though. I used to break and I used to drink and drug. And then I'd break it the next thing because all it did was exchange one misery for the next. You want me to pay 3 college tuitions at the same time while my wife sits home? You got to be out of your mind. Drink, drug. And then I'd do that. And then it would be, wait, my partner gets to take more money than me? And on and on and on and on. So I realized that one of the many things the program does for me, it gives me this ability to be gentle and to not consider myself to be defective, to get in touch with that little Nicky, to say, hello, hello. Time to do a little work, Nick. Time to do a little work. If you lash out at someone, or if you're mean-spirited, or if you're not, as best you understand, practicing the principles in all your affairs. And the great news is we have roadmaps, and we have brothers and sisters to talk to, and we have sponsors, and we have prayer, and we have meditation. And it's interesting to me that probably many of you long timers, or even others who get calls and texts on your anniversaries, I don't know if you feel the way that I do. It's I don't want to say uncomfortable, but I feel like the credit's going in the wrong place. In other words, my favorite thing in the world is ice cream. And today I'm 79 days sugar-free, different meeting, but I prayed on that and here we are. But I love ice cream. This program to me says, Nick, you can have ice cream every day. Every day. And I got people calling me up and saying, Nick, Jesus, you're doing such a good job. I'm like, good job at what? At what? I don't work the steps, I live them. I have had the gift of having this transformation. I've had the benefit of time on the back nine in my law career where I have time. I'm not raising little children. I don't have all these pressures that I see so many amazing people coming in, having to juggle. So I take it at face value that I see people coming back in and they say the primary reason that they went back out is because they disconnected from the program, stopped going to meetings generally, or didn't do thus and so. I'd like to tell you, and I believe this to be true, I believe that to be the case, but that's not the reason I do it. I do it, it's just because I don't know what else I would do. I love this life that I've been given. You know, John Wooden, one of the most successful basketball coaches and leaders of men, said there are 8 principles of learning: explanation, demonstration, imitation, repetition, 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 and repetition. So when I tell people that I work with, I'd like for you to go to 90 meetings in 90 days and to call me twice a day so we can talk. It's not because I'm their sponsor or because I want to control them. In large part, it's because it's what I was asked to do, and it worked. It continues to work for me. But also, it gets you into a lifestyle where you get up and you say please, or you say thank you. I make my bed and I come on the Rojo and make a few phone calls and read some prayers and try to be of service when I'm asked, to give back to a gracious God who struck me sober, who, as I look back at the situations I put myself and others in harm's way, there's really no explanation to the grace that I have received. And I feel it to be my responsibility to tell everybody that I can, not how to do the program, but what it's done for me, what it continues to do for me, the joy and the love that I get of meeting different people and hearing different stories and relating. I don't look for differences anymore. I look for similarities. I am struck by the notion of wondering about why did Jeremy grab me by the throat that night? Why did Paul Anderson come back and say to me, I knew you'd be back? Why did my sponsor say to me, I want you to know something before you tell me your fifth step? I love you and I've done everything you've done and probably then some. Washed it all away. And I'm going to end a little early. I'm going to tell you probably one of the most important. That girl, Lisa, she remains to be my longest life partner. We're closer now than we've ever been. That's largely in part because she lives in Florida and I live in Illinois. That's a little joke there. Um, but the real reason is this. In June of 2023, Lisa came up from Florida to Poughkeepsie to pay her respects and be a part of my mom's funeral. Our families were attached for so many years, 75 till now. What is that, 100 years? I don't know. It's a long time. 50 more years. And she came up to be with me and my family. And my mother loved her and she loved my mom. And on Sunday, as she's leaving to go back down to Florida, divorce not finalized, a few contentious motions going back and forth about thus and so, where you wouldn't really have the fondest, the strongest of memories about our relationship at that time. She grabs me by the suit coat and she says, Hun, still calls me Hun. So you do want to be divorced, having had no conversation about it at all. And because I had 2 years at the time, so I don't know how many years ago it was, 5. I said, Hun, because I had 2 years. I hope this doesn't sound mean-spirited, but you kind of left before the miracle happened. And without 1 second beat, she said, I left so the miracle could happen. And boy, you talk about a guy that tried to hang every resentment on the fact that you, my longest life partner, would abandon me. I forgot to tell you that Lisa packed up and moved out of the house 3 days. I went up 3 days after I went up to Hazleton, Betty Ford, and moved to Florida and filed for divorce without telling me. I really didn't have the time or the inclination to be resentful because there was a lot going on. And I'll tell you, when she told me what she told me, it washed away. Why did that happen? I can't make this stuff up, but I can tell you this. I don't believe any of it happened because I read 164 pages in a book. Pages helped me grow and return to little Nicky and deal with little Nicky. And the pages helped me to say to Lisa, I love you. I'm in a different relationship now. But she is the mother of my children. We'll all be vacationing in Colorado, Lisa and me, and I've worked that out with my new partner. Tell her how important. And the for Zone 5 is uh, back together as best you can be in a divorced family situation. Folks, I just can't make this stuff up. And this last note with 2 minutes. I'm in Colorado with my sister-in-law, Lisa's sister, Ellen. And I'm about to pull into a parking lot. You know what's going to happen here at Target. A guy comes, shoots from the other side, and pulls right into my space. And I don't want you to think that I'm St. Francis here, but this happened. I said, bless him, change me. And my sister-in-law said from the back seat, you mean F him, bless you. I said, no, Ellen, I used to mean that. And I try not to mean it anymore. And she said, well, that can't be. I said, no, it is. You know why? Maybe he did number one or number two in his pants like I did, and I had to run into the bathroom. Or maybe he left his wallet in the counter like I did and was running in. Or maybe he left his kid in the store like I did. Or his bag of drugs on the counter back in the bread aisle. A little pick me up. Can't make it up. It's just, I've probably been in a lot of those situations where other people have been. It doesn't convey the message to them, but it conveys it to me, right? Because why? Because I'm going to spend the whole day, if I don't do that otherwise, cursing that guy out and he doesn't even know it. Drink the poison, hope he dies. Life's too short for me. For me, at 68 years old, celebrating 7 years, I feel as blessed as I can be. I'm going to give you back 35 seconds. My name is Nick. I'm a grateful alcoholic. That's all I got. Love you.